guys, welcome to the blog. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my guilty pleasures. Actually, it's probably my biggest guilty pleasure, and that is professional wrestling. I know, it's silly, it's ridiculous, it's crass, it's over the top, it's fake, but I love it. And I've loved it since I was a kid, and I haven't stopped loving it. I haven't really outgrown it. Granted, I don't watch it as often as I used to. There used to be not a Monday night that I would miss any of the Monday Night Raw or Thursday Night SmackDown. Not like that anymore, but I still enjoy the occasional WrestleMania. We just had WrestleMania in April, and we just had this awesome WWE All-Stars game that just came out. So I've been back into thinking about wrestling and thinking about what is it that I like about it. Trying to quantify that in my head. And I came to the conclusion that the athleticism and theatricality of something like Cirque du Soleil, which I also really love, is present in wrestling. But there's also an improvisational and unpredictability to what happens in the ring, because as scripted and choreographed as people think it is, it's almost more improvised than it is choreographed. So that's thrilling. And there's also an interaction with the audience that happens in every match that I find to be absolutely awesome. The audience is absolutely as much a participant as the wrestlers. There's chanting back and forth, there's catchphrases, there's moments where the audience will actually change the direction a character will be written in. The audience decides they don't like somebody, that character then can change its path for weeks ahead in the storylines of wrestling. So that's exciting. I also love the behind-the-scenes nature of the business, and I'll get to that more in a second. But I was just watching WrestleMania, this year's WrestleMania, and thinking to myself, you know, the Triple H Undertaker match is a perfect example of what I love about wrestling. There's also what I don't like about wrestling and what most people point to in that WrestleMania. There's the stupid storylines that kind of insult the intelligence. There's the unnecessary cameo from Snoop Dogg doing some sort of weird American Idol takeoff that throws some C or D-list WWE superstars into the mix just to get them on the pay-per-view. And it's just cringeworthy and hard to get through because it's so flat and poorly executed. But then you have this Triple H Undertaker match, which is an example of why I keep coming back to it. Here you have this situation where we have the Undertaker, who's a character who's been around for 20 years and is in his 19th WrestleMania, undefeated. So you have this big undefeated streak coming into WrestleMania. And you have Triple H, you know, is he going to be the guy to break the streak? And of course, everybody knows going in, they're probably not going to break the streak because it's the special thing. And yet, the execution of the match is to the point where you start thinking, could this be the one where they break the streak? Is it going to be, are they actually going to do it? And how do they do that? Well, there's this wonderful set of rules, this sort of non-verbal language that wrestling has with its audience. You have a hierarchy of moves. You have all the normal wrestling moves, and then you have these characters' finishing moves that are specific to that character. And normally, people aren't able to kick out of those special moves. And then above that, you have other items like chairs and sledgehammers and things that are supposed to be even more powerful and even more damaging to people. So when those get brought into the mix, those are even more like lights out, he's not coming back. So you have these characters in this long engaged match, each one giving the other its finisher, both of them kicking out of the finisher, so you already are on a level of, well, this is special because you never kick out of the guy's finishing move. Then you bring out the chairs and the sledgehammers, and they kick out of that. The Undertaker kicks out of that despite all the odds. And then there's this wonderful moment, which is exactly what I love about wrestling, where you have Triple H deciding he's going to do the Undertaker's special move, his finisher, to absolutely kill the Undertaker. He does the symbol that the Undertaker always does. He puts the Undertaker in his tombstone piledriver. He executes it. He pins him like the Undertaker does, and then the Undertaker kicks out of that, much to the audience's shock. The crowd goes nuts, and Triple H reacts in a way that is shocked. He can't believe it. Something inhuman, larger than life is happening. So you have all of this history of these characters that led up to this moment. You have all this built-in knowledge of how that universe works used to tell this story. And in that moment, you feel like anything is possible, and the shock that is exhibited on that character's face, I was completely emotionally invested. Now, I know, to a non-wrestling fan, this must all sound ridiculous and silly, but it's, to me, the same as a comic book building up the history of Spider-Man or Superman or Batman and playing on those expectations. So when you're told, oh, Superman is being killed by Doomsday, you know Superman can't die, you know he's coming back at some point, but you still have this history of this character, and he's always the guy that saves the day. So I have that same storytelling, that same sequential storytelling, serialized storytelling that happens here with these characters that we've known for 20 years. So hopefully that makes sense. And then, of course, the athleticism of what they're doing, right? You know, these guys are breaking through tables and breaking their bodies. And if you saw the professional wrestling training episode of Totally Rad Show, I can attest with personal experience that even the small moves in the ring are very painful and very difficult and very tiring. So it's impressive that way too. Now, I did mention I love the behind-the-scenes stuff with wrestling. I'm a huge fan of the business, of finding out how things were written, how deals were brokered, how one wrestler moved from one company to another. The behind-the-scenes machinations of the industry are fascinating to me. I used to subscribe to the Figure 4 Weekly and read all these behind-the-scenes stuff. I love Beyond the Mat, which is a fantastic documentary. If you haven't seen, even if you're not a wrestling fan, you would love. So I got very excited when WWE recently released a True Story of WrestleMania DVD that was going to explain how WrestleMania came to be and the last 20 some odd years of WrestleMania. It was going to explain all the behind-the-scenes stories. So I checked out the DVD, and I should have known that it wasn't going to be what they explained it to be. Revelatory, behind the scenes, full of juicy gossip bits and never before told stories. It's not. It's basically a big advertisement for WrestleMania and a description of how they picked each new venue. This year we went to Houston, and that year we went to Los Angeles, and then that year, and they just keep explaining over and over, well, we had to outdo ourselves, so we did. We outdid ourselves that year. There is really very little content in terms of story or anecdotes or any kind of view behind the curtain of what went into making these wonderful moments that I remember growing up with and still enjoy now. It really is just a jerk-off of all these characters. They put over Hulk Hogan, they put over, there's a long stretch talking to Donald Trump, talking about his involvement and his friendship with Vince McMahon. And here you have these huge, larger-than-life characters. Vince McMahon is a fascinating character in your life, and yet we find out very little information about what went into putting together these matches, how things were decided, how it was decided who would win and who would lose, and where the titles would go. None of that's in there. So if, like me, you were excited about the true story of WrestleMania, don't waste your time. Not even worth a rental. Although the extra discs that just show the old matches, those are pretty exciting to see those old matches put together in a very nice format. But the documentary itself, big waste of time. So that's my guilty pleasure. I've come out of the closet and admitted it here on my blog. If you have a guilty pleasure that you want to admit to, or you're a wrestling fan and you'd like to discuss things, or any other question you have, you can write in a comment below this video on my blog at jeffcannata.com, or you can email me, jeffcannata@gmail.com. Thanks. I'll see you next time.